Hello, 508. I thought I'd make a screencast addressing some of the discussion you guys had based on your definition of reading. So I just had a chance to go through them all. And so I'll do this from time to time. Not every week, but some weeks I'll make a screencast that just addresses some of the things that we worked on the week before. So I thought I'd put this up for you to read, listen to over the weekend as you're finishing up your week 3. So first I'd like to say that you, for the most part, are doing a really, really excellent job keeping a discussion going in the forum. Everybody is really contributing some thoughtful ideas. Your original posts are very good. You're keeping up with the timeline set, so that's a big one with this definition of reading assignment that you all posted by a certain day. So really just good quality discussion going on in the forums. The only point I'd like to make is that when you do have a week like this where you needed to post your original post and then respond to 2 classmates, you're free to read as many as you like, but if you see that 5 or 6 people have already responded to one classmate, you can still respond to them, but make sure that then maybe that's like a 3rd post. So if you had to respond to 2 classmates, try to make it to folks that don't have as many or don't have any at all, because we did have a few students who didn't get any feedback on their definition, even though they turned it in on time, and then we had some threads that had like 11 or 12 responses. So let's try to be a little bit equitable in those. Of course, again, to reiterate, there's no limit on the number of responses you could post. So, if you were really interested in one, but it already has 7 replies to it, you can go ahead and reply, but then still do 2 others. Okay, so then you would, end up having 3 for the week. You won't get any extra credit for the 3rd one, but if you really just wanted to be part of that discussion, that's okay. So I pulled off a few things, and so some of the thoughts that I saw coming up, and I didn't put anybody's names next to these quotes, but I did pull them right from your forum, was that you had never been asked to construct a definition of reading. And so many of you teach in the classroom, many of you teach reading, but really hadn't stopped to think about what is reading. So it appeared in many of your definitions and your responses and the things that you said that you thought that this was a valuable assignment and was very thought-provoking for you to actually stop and to think about what reading is. One of the things that I noticed is that by and large most folks' initial posts were like a dictionary definition. They were trying to get it down into one succinct statement or one sentence. And so then by the end, when you came back and you had read everything, you had the discussions, it was much harder to put it into one sentence, right? So the more you know, sometimes the more difficult it becomes. But you did a really good job overall. I thought they were really interesting. So some of the recurring themes that folks definitely agreed that reading is complex, right? So reading is complex and is a process, and reading definitely is a process. Reading is a complex yet active process. Complex process of synergistic acts that serve a main purpose to create meaning. An active, layered, and complex process. So we definitely agreed that reading was complex and that reading is a process. Both of those are correct, right? If you read the literature and you read your textbook. I liked this idea of what reading involves is like baking a cake. You have separate ingredients: cake, batter, eggs, oil, water. You can see what every item is and what it contributes to the whole. So what I thought was interesting about that was quite a few people talked about how they did not like the example of the symphony, which really gets to the same point that this cake one does, but a lot of you said it doesn't mean anything to me because I don't know anything about a symphony. I've never played an instrument, I don't play in a symphony, I don't listen to the symphony. So that's an example of kind of an analogy falling flat. But this one, we probably all like cake and we all know how to make a cake. So this one really kind of spoke to me, especially in light of the comments you made about the symphony. So this was actually from Bobby, and if those of you did not read Bobby's post or have not read anything that Bobby is doing, Bobby is actually in China this year. So this seemed to provoke lots of thought and lots of response because she's got kind of a different perspective going on in terms of reading, because she's doing or she's learning and then dealing with students who know an ideographic language, whereas we have an alphabetic language. So she included reading can be defined as interpreting, comprehending, understanding, and analyzing a text or any alphabetic, numeric, or symbolic language. And so then there was a very nice discussion that followed about, not every language is alphabetic, and there are other things to consider. So if you haven't read that thread, I would suggest that you go, because it was a very interesting discussion. So I thought that that was a piece that I wanted to pull out because it did provoke a lot of thought and a lot of responses from you. One of the things that kind of struck me, that's my there, was the reticence to include meaning in the definitions. So lots of you wrote things like, I struggled to include something about meaning in my definition. I wanted to, but I originally didn't. Many of you then, of course, after you read the quotes and completed the assignment, went back and did put meaning in. But I wanted to direct your attention back to the screencast that I had up there, and I had this quote. So if readers can read words but do not understand what they are reading, they are not really reading. So it would make sense then for your definition of reading, if you were talking about it in terms of skills, you would want to include comprehension. If you were talking about it more holistically, you would want to put something in there about understanding or meaning. And then this was from one of your definitions. The goal in reading is to find meaning, so communication and understanding is taking place. So I wasn't quite sure why folks were a little bit hesitant to, and it was definitely a theme. There was more than one person who expressed this hesitation to include meaning in their definition. So it definitely belongs in there. Okay. So some things that folks added or put into theirs that are important points not to forget, but don't necessarily need to be explicitly stated in everybody's definition of reading, but definitely are very important parts of the reading process. The importance of background knowledge came out. Broadening the definition to include a variety of texts. I saw that as very influenced by Common Core and the discussions we've been having of late out in the field. Our goal is to develop readers that are not only able to read, but read deeply. And so I saw a little Common Core-esque language in that too. So what that says to me is that folks are definitely keeping up with what's out there and what's current, and you guys have a really good idea of what should be included in your definition of reading. Okay, so I just thought I'd put a little what you liked and what you didn't like. A lot of folks did not connect with that quote number 16 where the author used the analogy to relate reading to a symphony. So that's a really good point, and it's a good teaching point to take with you, is that when you want to use analogy or you want to teach by analogy, it's super important that your audience is going to be able to connect with that analogy. So when you think about your students and you're trying to explain something to them, you have to think about the age that they're at, the experiences that they had. Would this culturally be an analogy that makes sense? If I'm going to share this and I want to use it, because you use analogy so that people understand a concept, right? And if you use an analogy that in itself needs, if you compare it to something that itself needs explanation, then you can't explain the thing you were trying to explain by introducing the initial example. So just a good thing to remember. I also don't know that much about the symphony, so but it was a big name. And lots of people liked Goodman and Burke, right? So they make this point about defining reading as a problem-solving process where the reader has to discover what the author means while also making a connection for themselves. As you learn a little bit more about the different philosophies on reading and how one learns to read, you probably will understand more what Goodman is talking about when he defines reading as problem solving. So he likens reading and learning language to what he calls a psycholinguistic guessing game. The degree to which you may agree or not agree with that would probably depend on the stance that you eventually end up taking towards how people learn to read best. Goodman is definitely from the whole language camp, and so the way that he conceptualizes how one learns to read is very different than, let's say, Charles and Adam's perspective about reading being more of a series of sub skills. So, but we will get into all of that stuff as we continue this semester, so that you know that difference isn't that important. But a lot of you did like that quote, and I think it is a very good quote. It carries a lot of weight. All right, so I just thought, like I said, I would pull out some of the quotes and some of the themes that I saw. Overall, we did a really great job on those. If you'll notice, I didn't put grades underneath your individual posts in the threads. What I did was I just went into the grade book. So I read through them, counted that you did your required numbers of posts at the time and the days that you were supposed to do it, and then I just went into the grade book. So you won't see a rating underneath your post, but you will see a grade in the grade book for it. So listen. I hope you listened to. Obviously, you did listen to this weekend. If I'm saying, I hope you listened to this weekend. But get all your stuff in by Monday, and also take a look at the screencast if you didn't. I never included a screencast to introduce myself to you guys, so I did put that up there for you. All right, talk to you later.